So something that's been on my mind a lot lately is seating charts. I've been doing a lot of observation work, and I do frequently get the question from teachers, hey, I can't get these kids to do anything or even listen to me. They're just out of control. And one thing I've noticed that all these classrooms have in common is they never have seating charts. So I've done a lot of journaling about that lately. I've been thinking about how significant it is, the practice of just having a seating chart in the classroom. It should be like the first thing you do when you're planning out the new school year. I think it's really hard to implement halfway through the year, but do what you got to do. You know, I think about the Pareto's principle. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Pareto? The 80-20 principle, where 80% of your outcomes are because of 20% of the things that you do. So when I think of those significant classroom practices that we use, seating charts like number one. It's like up there. It's like the first thing I should do as a teacher to facilitate a productive and effective learning environment for my kiddos. And plus, it's easier to build relationships because then I have a better time memorizing, or I have an easier time, I should say, memorizing the students' names. And I know it's something that we inherently should know already, that students need organization and structure, and they need you to put that in place. And when they learn that structure, you can, of course, release a little bit of control the more and more they are accustomed to having responsibility within that structure you create. You can sort of loosen the grip a little bit and give them more responsibility in your class. But first, it's all about creating structure for every single one of your students. You're robbing them of learning opportunities when your lesson is unstructured, your classroom management is unstructured. I really feel that. And by the way, you can always change it, and you should. You should change your seating chart from time to time. I was notorious for changing my seating chart probably too often, but it wasn't just like where students sat, but the actual arrangement of desks, which is also very important, which I want to get into. How is your room arranged? You know, some teachers have a lot more opportunities to move their desks around than others, or they have versatile seating. I just want to focus on really 3 arrangement types. I co-developed this quick professional development called Classroom Management and Spatial Arrangements. It's a blueprint for effective communication through classroom design. And you can check out all the slides at this bit.ly link. I'll put it, I don't know, maybe up here. bit.ly/find a seat. All lowercase, find a seat. And you can look at the Google Slides, which I think are fun. If you want to use this with your PLC and have them thinking about their classroom management and the spatial arrangement and how organized and structured their classroom is. That's another thing. You want to keep your classroom clean and not messy. You want to keep it organized too, as well as keeping your students organized. Now, I'm not trying to objectify them, of course. They're all darling, individual, beautiful snowflakes. But also, I'm gonna demonstrate some control of my classroom here. We're gonna go through 3 room arrangements, and I want you to think about which of the following seating arrangements would you find most comfortable or least comfortable as a student? And then flip it, which would you find most and least comfortable as a teacher? So pause, if you will, going through these. But we have the basic grid setup, which, by the way, I love. I know it's boring. I feel like it gets a lot of bad press as like we're standardizing these kids, locking them into this grid setup. And you know what? Hey, you come and try and lead a class discussion and keep kids focused, okay? And you're gonna do whatever you can. And I feel like the grid setup is a good setup if the teacher is constantly navigating around the room. You can't just stay in the front and expect to be an effective teacher by standing still just in the front. You wanna move about the room. The other one that I think is pretty popular, and I think you see these in like movies with the teacher that's most engaging, that's a little bit over the top eccentric. He's the favorite teacher, the savior teacher, is the shoe. Now, the horseshoe, of course. The horseshoe I think is a really good for certain classes. Not every class is going to be good with the horseshoe, so consider that. And then Third, the group seating. Not everybody can handle the group seating. I'm talking about teachers and students. Which would you most find comfortable as a student? Which would you find least comfortable as a student? And vice versa. Which would you find most comfortable as the teacher and least comfortable as a teacher? Go ahead, discuss that. Now, this research by Simmons, Sherry, and Pamela J. Cooper talks about the actual active engagement that's happening with the students. This is the measurements of engagement of students based on proximity to the front of the room. Now, of course, this is an argument for why you would want to move about the room, so you hit that 31%, 48% in the back of the room that's being disengaged. Naturally, as you would probably guess, the front row is the most engaged, most focused in the classroom. But I mean, look at the line of sight. You go straight down the middle if you're a teacher that doesn't move. Now, how about the horseshoe? Now, I thought this was actually surprising because the horseshoe is just begging for you to move about the classroom, at least up and down through the middle. But as you may know if you've tried the horseshoe, students can still get disengaged if they're not seated directly looking forward at you. If they might, even that just needing to tilt their head to look this way is almost too much for some students when their shoulders are focused on the students across the room and the sides. And it shows there too, where the students that are pointed directly at the front of the room have the highest interaction, highest engagement. The lowest and the moderate interaction, of course, because they're seated more towards the front, but the lowest, of course, are those that they're looking at across from their buddies. They're looking straight across, and of course they're going to be more interactive with the student across from them, making silly faces or sign language. And now let's start looking at the lowest to highest to moderate interaction amongst the group setup. So here's our lowest along the sides, very similar to the horseshoe method setup arrangement of desks, right? There's our moderate, a little better because they're more faced towards the front, and then of course our highest. Now I'm guessing the highest there on the ends because they have to turn their chairs all the way around, but I thought that was pretty interesting. Given these three setups, which do you think would be best for your classroom? I think it's a subject-to-subject basis. Like, I definitely believe this is ideal if you're like a music teacher or art teacher, some sort of performance type debate, right? I think this is a very popular one right here with science classes, the group setting, because they're working together in teams, which I love. And I had an overpacked classroom, and the grid setup was best for me. However, I will say we were constantly moving the desks around, and that's something you should do too. Like, they should pick up their desks and turn them as much as you can. You can move them into groups of 3 to 4, although I personally hate like groups over 4. Like, I like pairs of students working together, and maybe it's more to grade in the long run when it's doing like small group projects. But I don't know, 3 students together, the quality of work always dipped for me. That's just me. You may be great at getting students to do phenomenal group work, but that's just me. And lighting is always important. That's just my next like little rant is that I love the idea of having like Christmas lights in the room and lamps, because the fluorescent lights get a bit much. But you gotta learn to adjust the lights. And so don't forget to also, every once in a while, just flip all the lights on, dim them back down, flip them all on, just periodically over the course of a lesson. I think it subconsciously just wakes up the brain a little bit. And so that is my rant on classroom management and spatial arrangements. I hope you enjoy. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your students, and take care of each other.